Guilt is feeling bad about what you do. Shame is feeling bad about who you are. So to your point, shame, and that is feeling unlovable, broken, unworthy, not good enough. That the SLD, the codependent, identifies themselves as a broken, unloving person.
If you fight, you're walking into it rather than out of it, which is the
You're
whole point about
basically,
the pigs and the
well, just
right.
like well, would you step into a wrestling ring with a wrestler? Let's assume that we both are young and vital.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Jerry Wise, and I'm so happy to have a special guest today, Ross Rosenberg. And I think we'll have a fabulous discussion today. He's a psychotherapist, author, and speaker best known for his work on narcissistic abuse, codependency, and self-love recovery. He coined the term self-love deficit disorder, SLDD, as a reframe of the codependency term or concept, and developed a self-love recovery model which focuses on healing from toxic relationships. He's also the author of the incredible selling The Human Magnet Syndrome, a groundbreaking book that explores why codependents and narcissists are irresistibly drawn to each other in dysfunctional relationships. Through his work, he helped countless people break free from the toxic cycles and reclaim their self-worth. He also has a new book that is out called The Codependency Revolution. I would definitely recommend that as well, because as he develops him and grows as a person, his work becomes even more rich. And this is his latest book. Welcome, Ross.
Hey Jerry, it's so nice to be on again. The last time was a joy, and I look forward to another wonderful, interesting, and stimulating conversation.
Great. I love talking about codependency, self-love, recovery from narcissistic abuse and trauma. I enjoy that discussion because I think so many people suffer in these ways, including myself and my own history, and that I find it as a means of healing and recovery for myself to work on that verbally and mentally and emotionally. And so I do like talking about these topics, and I think you do too.
It's it's near and dear to me. I would not have developed the content that I have if I didn't struggle, if I didn't go through the same problems that I help my clients with. So yes, this is my work is part of me.
Well, and probably your success, in my way of thinking of self-differentiation, we can only take someone as far as we have gone. And if you've experienced that and gone through that, and that doesn't mean someone has to have everybody's experience to be able to help them, but there are some universal experiences we want to have. When I think about self-differentiation, for example, I want to be able to, and you use the phrase, be able to observe and not absorb. I want to be able to learn that skill, and I want to learn to do that. If you've actually gone through the work of learning to do that, then when you go to help someone, even though their issue may be different than what yours was, you still have that basic universal of we must learn to do that, regardless of what your problems are. That detachment is so important. And so I think you have done that well in working with your clients and through your books because you've had to learn that, as personally. It's not just a book concept that you're handing out to somebody.
Yes,
Um,
in fact, if I may, let me clarify. The observe, don't absorb technique is something that I developed as a technique that fits into a larger treatment program, my self-love recovery treatment program. And I want to start with the beginning of differentiation and then connect it to my self-love recovery program and observe, don't absorb. The way that I see differentiation, so just to make sure that we're using the words, because so many people use words effectively, but they differ from another person.
they may differ, yes.
So to differentiate is to become healthy as an individual before you enter into a relationship. A lot of people who are self-love deficient or codependent, they are terrified of being alone because being alone equals lonely, and loneliness, the deep bone aching pain, connects to their core shame. So they need another person. They need to feel lost within a relationship with another person to feel somewhat, and it's a paradoxical condition, stable. And that is not differentiation, that is enmeshment. Differentiation or
Absolutely.
individuation, a synonym, is loving yourself enough, well enough, to then be able to love another person. And that, I believe, we're using that as differentiation. The observe, don't absorb technique is a way to manage the onslaught of abuse and harm perpetrated against you by a pathological narcissist. And we can talk about that a little bit later, but in the most general sense, you have to detach from the insanity of as my dad once said, what starts off as a soulmate ends up as a cellmate. You have to detach from that insanity and find a path into yourself to heal. And detachment on a general sense is a very important part of the recovery program.
And I couldn't disagree with anything you just said. And certainly that's my notion as well. And from a family systems perspective,
Yeah,
you have to have distance before you can have closeness.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
paradoxical. And that distance doesn't mean coldness. It doesn't mean uncompassion. It doesn't mean any of that. It means I have a self
Right,
and I have that distance between, we're not just enmeshed. I have a
right,
distance so that I can be close.
right.
And I
And
think
if you
that's what your work talks about too.
absolutely, and if you do identify, not but anyone listening, if you do identify with the concept of being codependent or self-love deficient, by definition, you didn't grow up having a separate identity. Healthy parents, they nurture
Right.
that. That's part of the developmental process. But because of the attachment trauma, if you are a child who's going to become a future SLD or codependent, you survived by being enmeshed with your narcissist and
Absolutely.
molding yourself, becoming what they needed you to be, or what they needed you not to become, just to be the person that made them feel good. So by the time you get into adulthood, and because of the human magnet syndrome, you found yourself with a narcissist, you don't have a sense of self. You're not individuated. You're not differentiated. You're part of this ego mass that is defined and changed daily, sometimes by the narcissist we live with.
No, no. We're again. It feels so good to talk to someone who is
Gets
a
it.
kindred spirit
Yeah,
in
yeah,
terms of understanding that. And we've come from different backgrounds and we've come from
yeah,
different, but we're headed on the same journey. That's what I
absolutely.
like about talking
I,
with you.
I'm still in it. I tell
Oh,
people
oh yeah.
I'm still
Oh,
working my program, and it keeps me focused, and it's a lifelong commitment to find self-love abundance, which is what I call the cure from the problem of self-love
hmm
deficit disorder. You just don't get it and go, "Yay, I'm self-love
right, right.
abundant.
Oh, I've arrived.
Codependency's over." No,
This codependency's over.
no,
How nice.
it's still in the background. It's in your rear view mirror,
Right.
and using that as a metaphor, seeing in a rearview mirror makes you realize that you got to accelerate even more or keep it going to love yourself.
You talked about when we were growing up as children and the trauma bond and all that was going on and a lack of self, and I think of that as this whole family super self,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
which everyone's partaking of, that involves enmeshment, trauma, roles. Everybody's got to play
absolutely.
roles, beliefs, subjectivity. Everybody's subjectivity kind of has to be the same way. The way you see it, not objectivity, but subjectivity. How you perceive everything. And so you have this family super self, and you carry that on into adulthood and our relationships, and we carry that on into our adult life. And that, so the, for my way of thinking. The work of self-differentiation is differentiating from that family clump, that family superself. And
Absolutely.
and the
It's
feelings and then and we have a it's just, so we end up with a pseudo self. I end up being a pseudo self Jerry
yeah. Let
because
me.
I'm the family Jerry rather than
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Jerry,
So
if I
so
can.
so so let me kind of piggyback on what you're saying. By the
Sure.
way, Jerry, you remind me of when I was in graduate school a million years ago, probably 38 years
Well,
ago.
then mine was 2 million years ago.
Yeah, and I took one course on family systems theory by a guy named Ronald Levant, and the whole
Ah,
course was based upon a paper. And you know what? And the paper had to be entitled "How I Differentiated from My Family." And I get goosebumps because it was the first time I looked at how I had not yet
I had
become an
not
individual.
done that right.
Yeah, but I wanted to use, so your term, the supercell, I love all that family systems language you use. What I want to add to that is
Sure.
in this supercell is created, governed by and I quote this, the culture of the narcissist, that everyone is running around trying to either avoid harm or meet the conditional needs so that, as you said, everyone
Or
has,
pre-obeying, or
oh yeah,
all
and
that is a part of that culture that you.
anticipating. So the people within this supercell and growing up in this family system, they cannot individuate. They cannot find their sense of self, especially as they grow up, because they sacrifice that in order to survive the wrath,
To
either by
survive.
survive what the narcissist will do, harm, or won't do, neglect or deprivation.
Well, and growing up in a family like that, there no act of autonomy or self-differentiation will go unpunished,
Absolutely, because we're looking at a parent that has a personality disorder, has
right?
so let's say narcissistic personality disorder, and as we know this, they have narcissistic injuries. So if you should challenge them, and you're a child, they have ultimate power over you. So the child believes that they can be destroyed, or they are destroyed on a daily basis, which is the plight of the child who does not become a codependent when they grow up. So yeah, you're dealing with rigidity in a system that the rules change at every given moment.
Can and as I was, and I know I've read the Codependency Revolution,
Oh,
and as reading that, I picked up on it. It's almost, and I wanted to ask you about this
hmm,
in terms of guilt and shame.
yeah,
It seems like a couple of times you did imply, which is kind of where I'm at, that this guilt and shame is not really you.
right,
I'm
yeah,
not saying you don't feel it. I'm not saying, but it's
yeah.
really not you. And
Well,
that's where I use the word systems feelings. In other words,
interesting.
these are systems feelings. I'm living out the family Wi-Fi
That's
that I'm
interesting.
connected with, and now I'm feeling shame and guilt on cue.
Right.
But several things you had talked about in there, that this is not the true you. You are
Right.
experiencing it, but don't
Well,
take
yeah.
that as being you.
Right. So let me. I learned this a long time ago, and I'm surprised how many people go, "Oh my gosh, that's so interesting." So there's the basic definition of guilt and shame. Guilt is feeling bad about what you do. Shame is feeling bad about who you are. So to your point, shame, and that is feeling unlovable, broken, unworthy, not good enough. That that the SLD, the codependent, identifies themselves as a broken, unloving person. So, according to what you and I are
At the
saying,
core, right?
that's not you. That is what you had to become in order to survive in this supercell, this family system, this dysfunctional family governed by the insanity of a pathological narcissist. So the shame self,
Shame
the
self.
sad,
That's a
the
good
sad,
right.
the sad thing for many codependents is they believe it's them and they keep perpetuating that belief by what they do or don't do in their relationship with a narcissist. You and I believe that you can heal, you can overcome, you can move beyond that and find out that you are meant to be much different. You're not the shame. You are everything but the opposite.
And that's such a powerful concept, I believe, because it helped me through my recovery that, oh, you mean I am not my shame.
Right.
You know,
It's a it's tough
that's a tough,
because we talk about gaslighting. So
yes,
I've come to understand that gaslighting is an important concept to understand if you're a codependent in a relationship with a narcissist. But I believe the trauma that is induced by being brought up by a narcissist in your family, you are gaslit into your shame self. The narcissist
yes,
proved over and
yes,
over again
yes.
by manipulating the environment that you are um, crap. You are nothing unless you make them happy. And it's impossible to make a narcissist happy. So if they can get you to believe that you're a bad person, you're not lovable, and that keeps you on guard in this situation where you're always trying to prove otherwise, and you never quite get there.
And that relationship emotional dynamic is some of the core of the enmeshment. That's where the
Yeah.
emotional enmeshment is, because then if they're gaslighting you
Hmm.
and you are accepting that, and as children, we about had to, I mean, we didn't have any choice. We had to
Of
survive.
course.
And
Absolutely.
now, as adults, we now have a chance to accept or not accept. That it's tough work, but it's important.
But to
And but
accept there's a risk.
to accept, right. And if the I have to accept that, and then based on my reactivity to it, it enmeshes us even further because reactivity tends to enmesh. And that's why
Right.
I try to teach people we need to watch our reactivity because
Right.
it is a function of the enmeshment.
Right.
Don't keep re-enmeshing by, well, they said I was stupid. I'm an adult now. My dad said I was stupid, so then I argued with him about how I'm not stupid. And I got
Right.
angry and I got, no, you just became more enmeshed
Right.
over the stupid issue.
And what you're talking about circles back to how we began. It focuses on the importance of the observe, don't absorb technique, which started by this. The idea started by a saying by George Bernard Shaw: "Don't wrestle with pigs; you'll get dirty, and besides, the pig likes it." So, to your point,
Right.
that you have to keep fighting to survive, and when you fight, you stay enmeshed. So
When
what
you,
I when you
right.
fight, you stay enmeshed. And so what you and I are doing, just using different terminology, I am teaching that the fight always brings you into the domain that you lose the battle.
Brings me into their domain.
Right, where it's so
That's
using George Bernard Shaw's saying, don't get
right.
into the wrestling ring. You're going to lose in the wrestling ring. Stay out of the wrestling ring. Don't get dirty and learn to observe the person trying to pull you into it and not absorb, which is be antagonized and get mad, absorb the feeling. Because once you get mad or get triggered, you want to go into the wrestling ring.
But Ross, if I don't do that, aren't I just letting their statement stand? And aren't I agreeing or accepting with what they're saying? I'm sure
Great,
you've
great.
heard that 1,000
Oh
times.
yeah, great question. Okay, yes and no. So all
Right.
of this is couched within my treatment program. So the person who's doing this, if they weren't in treatment, then it makes no sense because they're not fighting, but yet they're not moving out of the dysfunctional relationship. So if you're in what I call a self-love recovery treatment program or self-love recovery mode, you have a plan to get out of the relationship, to break up, to divorce, to leave. But the only way to do that is to learn to not get into the wrestling ring and fight. You have to figure out a way to disengage. And this is where you can connect to resources, whether they're inside of you or with a person such as you, me, or another clinician. So you're not ignoring it just for the sake of ignoring it. You have a plan to get
Right.
out And you know that
Right.
if you fight to get out, you have less of a chance to be successful than if you disengage from the fighting and find access to plans and move forward on those.
If you fight, you're walking into it rather than out of it,
You're,
which is
you're,
the
you're
whole point about
basically,
the pigs and the
well, just
right.
like well, would you step into a wrestling ring with a wrestler? Let's assume that we both are young and vital,
Uh,
and we're
oh,
no,
okay.
no, because they're gonna kick our butt. No, no,
Yes.
absolutely not. Would someone who's a boxer, would he say, come in the wrestling ring? No,
Come on
absolutely, because I
in.
get my.
No, thank you.
And that's my point is why fight? If you fight someone who is better at the fight, who loves to get dirty and get into the mud, you'll lose. The fight that you will win at is disengagement because then you can work your plans out around the narcissist to get out. But you have to have that
Well,
plan. Otherwise, it'll
well,
fail, I believe.
no, and no. I agree with you 100%.
Yes.
And what the neat thing about not choosing to fight,
Hmm.
in my mind, I'm thinking of the chronic anxiety from the family causes this
Oh, yeah.
reactivity, and
Right.
then I want to go, oh, I'm just so tired of you treating me so badly, and why don't you just shut up? And and
Right.
it's like you're not doing anything other than staying more enmeshed, as we've been
Right.
saying.
And I call that false power syndrome. It's like
Oh, false power.
yeah. So it's part of being a human that you get mad and you get angry and you go into flight or fight mode.
Right.
Where and we learned this as cavemen back in our ancestors to
We had
survive.
to. Right.
So if the narcissist can trigger you to fight him or her, they got you in a wrestling ring.
They
If you're
got you.
observing, you know that's what they do. You watch them try to trigger you, and to absorb is to get triggered. You absorb the emotions. And it's hard because once you step out of that, the narcissist starts to get even more ruthless, relentless, and harmful
But they
because
want
they
you to
know they're
change
losing
back.
power.
Right.
They're
They
losing
want you to
power.
change back. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I call that, we talk about the three stages of resistance when
Yeah.
someone gets like that, because they are not going to want to let you go
No,
with that.
because their whole reality is based upon. I mean, they're parasites. They live off of other people. They can't exist alone. And if
Right.
you leave a
Right.
narcissist, you are depriving them of sustenance, and therefore, I mean, of course, they don't know this consciously. They're going to do whatever they can to keep you enmeshed, reactive in the wrestling ring.
When I also think of, okay, if we tell people, okay, don't be reactive, don't
Right.
fight, don't call them names, don't play in their mud hole here, in the mud.
Yeah.
Don't play in that. The tough part is, oh, but I just feel so weak, or whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're asking me to just be passive. No, asking you to be actively non-reactive.
Right.
That's
And
different than passive.
and you and I have a larger focus. So you're not just teaching, or I'm not just teaching the person don't react just so you cannot get sucked into
Not
that.
have trouble or
But there's a bigger plan. The plan is, in my case with my clients, is to remove themselves from a system, a relationship that cannot
right.
survive with their success. And
That-
I want to say that again, a system or relationship that cannot survive with their success. So they have a plan that we are helping them to execute on. Otherwise, you're just making it more painful and there's no solution at the end of the day.
Only a repetition and recycling.
Exactly. I love that. Yes.
And the other notion I think about when I talk to people about being non-reactive, because they'll feel, oh, I'm just being weak, or you're just asking me to let them
Right.
roll over me, or whatever kind of phrase. And that's, of course, not what I'm hoping. What I'm hoping is that if you work on being non-reactive, then as you become non-reactive, you're going to change your emotional location to this
Hmm.
person. And you're now at a point of going, okay, if I'm non-reactive, then who or what am I going to be?
Right.
Because
Yeah. I
that's what
mean,
I've been.
right.
So, oh, you're challenging me to think, yeah, what kind of relationship do you want to have with this person?
Right.
And what do you
And
want to do with them?
And the
And what are you going
bigger
to do with you? You know,
and the bigger discussion is to help them understand who you are, self-love deficient, codependent, and who they are.
right?
They have a personality disorder. They are
Right.
incapable by virtue of the mental health diagnosis of changing. That is why my situation might be different than yours because I'm working with clients whose partner are incapable of change and threatened by change.
And
So this
and
observed,
most of mine are, right. Most, but not
well,
all, but not all.
so what I call the observed and absorbed idea, and what you have your own, and I don't know, detachment, whatever you refer
Right.
it to. These are vehicles to drive you in the direction of getting out. There
Hmm.
is a purpose for it. So
Right.
and I remind people, and I don't know about you, Jerry, every time I've lost my temper and I fought back and I thought I kicked someone's butt,
I
I look,
won.
yeah, I won. I look back at it and I thought later, and I go, damn, I made a fool out of myself.
I made a fool out of myself.
I lost my temper, or I made things worse. Fighting, when you're activated or triggered in fight or flight, kind of disconnects your rational mind. The fight keeps you connected, as you said earlier, to escape the relationship, have a plan, and while you're executing that plan in the background, you have to understand that the narcissist will be more motivated than ever to get you to fight them. In fact, they'll want you
They want you to do that, right? They need
because
you to
that's
do that. They
because they're
need.
pigs in a wrestling ring. They love to get dirty and muddy.
That's right. They need you to join them in that. And when we, let's say, again, we begin to see that, oh, and when I think about this reactivity, I
Yes.
think of that about also being what is the source of that in our family of origin?
Oh yeah.
How is your reactivity go back to your childhood? To let's understand that rather than only understanding it in terms of the narcissist and me.
Right.
Let's go back and understand that so that you can understand better that you can be an adult, sort this out, and make adult, mature, healthy decisions,
Right.
which you never got that opportunity before.
Right. Make
Nobody
decisions.
was teaching you that, or
Making a decision, going back to the terms we use, as a differentiated or individuated person who is not gaslit, manipulated into feeding into the the
abused.
the wiles, the manipulation, the gaslighting. When you break free from that, you have so much power, and the narcissist is so threatened, they double down. And so, if you do learn, and I say this to anyone listening or watching, if you do what Jerry or I am saying, understand that the narcissist is going to actually turn it on, turn the abuse, the harm, the reactivity more. And by doing so, I'm suggesting for you to understand the power you have just by that reaction.
Well said. And with the narcissist, I think also there is a similarity in this dynamic that goes back to our childhood.
Oh, absolutely.
And now again, we may not have had all narcissists in our family. I don't mean that, but there's similarities that go back in terms of this theme
Right,
of I'm going to be myself, and they're going to go, no, you're not.
right,
But I don't like this. I don't care. You
right.
you do it anyway. It's you
And,
be
and
who I want you to be.
And as I start off my latest book, I start off with a chapter that talks about the generational movement of codependency and narcissism, and that if you're a codependent or self-love deficient, the probability is in the high 90s that one of your parent had a personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and the other, therefore, according to the human magnet syndrome, was a codependent. And then how
Right.
everyone reacted to that system is will speak to what they become when they become an adult. So you got this family and this crucible. These kids are being raised by the harm, the unmitigated harm caused by the narcissistic parent and the codependent or SLD parent who's not able to change that, and it's passed on, and it will be passed
And
on
it is
until forever
passed
until you stop
on.
it in yourself.
Right. Until you break that cycle.
Yes.
And I even think of, when I think of systems feelings, like
Hmm.
if I feel shame, well,
Yeah.
I had a shame-based family growing up. And
Yes.
so I can have shame on cue.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean,
And
that's the play.
and I
The,
could say you as a child, because it's the same thing as me. We can be triggered to have shame because as a child, that's a reminder of the power the narcissist had over us. If they can make us feel bad, and we keep trying extra hard to make them happy, we can't get there. It's just a reminder of where we came from and how it manifests still as adults in our life.
and when you talked about transgenerational or intergenerational,
Yeah,
the that shame, which is I think of as a systems feelings or a
yeah,
family feeling,
yeah.
goes back the next generation and the next
Absolutely.
generation back, and then so
Absolutely.
I could be experiencing great great grandpa's shame that because it's
Absolutely.
just coming all the way through and through the DNA, hormones, all the things that we
Absolutely.
get.
Epigenetics. Or
Right.
yeah, I mean, it goes from one generation to another. And as I wrote about four generations, everyone was
Yeah.
in my family there's a husband and wife. The husband or the wife has pathological narcissist, and the other one was a codependent, someone with self-love deficit disorder, and then they raised their children. And then those children were the next generation and the next generation. And so I made the connection between my great grandparents and my parents, my childhood, and then what I became. And it won't
Right.
change. It's immutable. Like you said, it's a system that has marching orders that um,
Have
is
been have been going
resistant.
on for some time. Right.
Absolutely.
And do we want to pass those on? And often, well, we are imperfect parents, imperfect beings. We're going to pass some of that along to our children for sure. The more we recover, or the way I think of it is, whatever issues I don't resolve, my son Andrew will get to.
Well, they will be challenged to resolve, whether they do or not.
Right, right. They
I mean, we
exactly.
hope that they will.
We
I hope
hope
that
that they will. Right,
yeah. I mean, I
but they
I
will
hope
be
that
challenged to resolve. Right.
yes,
That's right. Whether they do or not is their, yeah.
we,
But what's ever left over for me gets to go on
the
further.
good stuff too.
And the good stuff too. No, no, that's, we got to say that as well. I mentioned that. Do you talk about self-gaslighting?
Um, t Explain to me your understanding of it because we all
Sure,
every therapist has
sure.
their own way of understanding
Every
things.
therapist, right,
Yeah.
right.
So and then I'll be able to say yes or
Yes
no.
or no, or right, right,
Yeah.
right.
So yeah. What is
The
self-gaslighting?
No, and I'm sure you talk about gaslighting. There,
Oh
I have
yes.
no doubt. No doubt that you talk about that. When If I have been gaslit growing
Right.
up, and of course, if somebody says, you're just stupid, you're just a
Right.
stupid child, that's
Right.
gaslighting because I'm not a stupid child, but you just gaslit me into thinking I was a stupid child if I'm a kid. Then when we become adults, I find that the way we were parented is the way I treat myself.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
so then I think about self gaslighting and that how do I gaslight myself? And that's where I believe all these things would be
Right.
self gaslighting.
Right.
If I
Well,
believe I'm unworthy, I mean, that's a self gaslighting
so
dynamic.
I believe that. So let me expand on the idea. So
Okay.
gaslighting is when someone manipulates the environment purposefully in order to make you believe you have a problem that you didn't have or a problem that you had is much worse. And so if you're gaslit as a child, the narcissist parent has a vested interest in proving to you that, say, for example, you're dumb. Could be that you're ugly, that you're this or that. They will keep, and once they
Stupid.
prove it to you and you believe it, then you can't escape it. Okay, so that's gaslighting. So just moving that to self-gaslighting is when you prove to yourself unconsciously, because who's going to do this on purpose?
Right, right.
Your worst fears, your deepest insecurities. So say no one will love me, and I'm not lovable, and you make bad choices in your relationships, well, now you're proven to yourself if you choose a narcissist, well, you just are going to, now you've set yourself up to prove that you're not lovable.
To prove.
So, yeah, so it's like building a case against yourself by your actions.
Right.
If you grew up to feel, let's say you're too tall. Let's go too tall because it's easier to. If I go too short, I'll get comments.
Lots of problems. You're too tall. Right.
Yeah, too tall. And you just
And it
keep
could be
telling.
to anything. Right.
Yeah, yes, I was just trying to be politically correct.
Right.
And
Sure.
then, and you keep telling yourself, well, no one loves a tall person. You keep reminding yourself, so you're gaslighting yourself to believe that, and then it becomes virtually impossible to escape that type of thought process.
And you're right. And then it turned, since the parents are no longer in the picture, or they may be passed away, or who knows what.
Right. They're in
Now
your
that
head.
has to, they're in your head, and they will carry them with us. And
Exactly.
then, but their head ends up being, it's kind of my internal process, and I'm self-gaslighting, which I
Right.
think is that proving who I am unconsciously to myself.
Another
and
term for
and
it.
and I'm sure
Huh?
you address that in your program. I'm sure that's an
In
issue
different
that's
in different ways, but an
right.
idea that I thought of is the idea of the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh,
If you believe, and it goes to exactly what we're talking about, it's just another way of looking at it. If you believe that you'll never be successful in some part of your career, you're going to unintentionally sabotage yourself to keep proving it. And so you keep proving to yourself your biggest insecurity. And
oh,
that,
right, which I did, which I,
which I did
I
too,
certainly did. I mean,
way
that's
too many times.
I made sure that was the case, and that I would be inadequate in all kinds of ways, and yeah, had was gaslighting myself, a self-gaslighting. And I think what I've thought about, whatever the family has done, what am I doing with that now?
Right,
How is that showing up today for me, and
right,
how am I doing it? Because it's
right,
the subjectivity, it's the culture, it's, as you say, it's the whole, it's the way the world looks to
right.
me.
Well, and
That's
you and I learned eons ago in graduate school in our family systems course is the goal is to become differentiated, is to be your own person, different outside
right,
the dysfunctional mass that is controlled in the case of my clients by narcissists. That's not
right.
easy
That
because all the outside influences, say the narcissist or the codependents, the SLDs, are threatened by your mental health. But as you were alluding to, the voices in your head, and
the
I'm not talking about
it,
schizophrenia, it's
no,
the
no,
messages
the
that were
it's the right,
implanted
the
early on by
programming,
the
the
programming,
programming,
the
right, rather
gaslighting
than
that you had as a child. Well, those become your own voices, and are and that's what I help my clients learn. That thought they have, what is the origin of that thought? Like, I'm dumb, no one will love me. Okay, I get,
right.
but I want you to think the very
Okay,
first time you heard that, and they'll go, and it's hard, and I have to use a couple of treatment techniques, but they go, oh yeah, I heard that when I was a kid. And that is another way to differentiate from the
to
subjectivity you talk
oh,
about.
that's what I learned then. Maybe
It's not
that's something I can.
me,
It's not me. The
right?
other thing, another technique that I use when people have a hard time letting go of the self gaslighting, or even shame and guilt. If you did let go of your shame right now, what would be the downsides?
If you let
Not
go
the
of your
upsides.
and if you let go of your shame, again, I see the world through SLDs in
Right,
relationship with narcissists.
right.
Um, then it's only logical that if you let it go, then you might like yourself or love yourself. That is threatening to the
That
narcissist,
that it will absolutely turn out badly.
right? And
Right,
that's
is the belief, right.
and if
And
we
not
can
even just
show
the
them.
belief, it really can turn out
Right,
badly.
and if we can show them that, because the gaslighting makes them believe they are the captains of their own demise, their own failures. But if we can show that as you get better, so this is pure family systems theory. If you get better, you're upsetting the apple cart. and
That's
everyone
family
gets nervous.
systems. Everybody
And
gets
if we can
nervous.
show that, not only do we prove the powers that have overwhelmed them to control them, but we prove that recovery is going to be really, really hard because everyone in the family, sister, brother, mother, father, wife, if you're older, they are going to do whatever they can to keep you where you used to be because if you change, they're alone and they will do anything, like you're cutting off their oxygen.
And that's why sometimes I feel my message is a road less traveled.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Be, because it's like, well, who wants to do that?
Right.
Who
It's so
wants to do that hard work of, well, I didn't say it was fun. I do believe it can be exciting. I
yeah.
think there are times that you change instantaneously, and I think there are times that you change over time. So
So
we have all of those dynamics going on. So it can be quite a ride.
right. It's so funny you say that. You and I have so many similarities that the poem by Robert Frost, "The Road Less Traveled," and it's kind of like a core set of ideas. You get to a juncture and you have a choice to travel where the path has been worn, where you have done this, you can go in this direction with your eyes closed and then not change and have less risk, or you can go down the path where it's
We
dark,
don't know where we
where it's
don't
going to
know
go. And
where that's going to.
and that
And
and that is
and
the
that
decision.
well, and that's here's a road less traveled kind of technique, as I mentioned. If
Yeah,
you gave up all of your guilt, what would be the downsides? Who would you be?
exactly.
Who would? And that's like, oh, that's a road that I don't know if I want to. That's pretty scary because
Yeah,
I'm so used to my shame and guilt. I mean, what? Now you're asking me to live
and
a life without that.
and then you as you do that, and then you ask the next question: what will the people around you be like? How will they be?
Right? How?
Do they?
And you can predict.
Oh, absolutely. This
Because in
family
family
system
systems,
theory.
we can predict.
Absolutely.
We can
Yeah,
predict what's
absolutely.
going to go on.
You give up your guilt. You have to then start
Everybody's
believing in
not
the
all
opposite.
sitting around going, "Yay!" They're not all
Right.
clapping and
You don't fit in anymore. So that is why when we bring them to
you're
the
being selfish. You're being non-Christian. You're being
exactly
all those kind of things.
or narcissistic, which is
Or narcissistic. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
projective
I'll
identification.
be a narcissist.
That is why when you get to the crossroads between the two roads, you and I prepare our clients by saying this path where you give up your shame and you have self-love, there are so many risks. There's going to be all of this that's going to try to undermine you. What I try to do is try to be specific so that they can prepare ahead of time.
Right. And I can help you with the risk. And I can even help
Absolutely.
you mitigate some of the risks. And in
Absolutely.
fact, and then they'll say, but I think this road over here is more known and easier for me.
Right.
And then I say, I think you just gaslighted yourself
Right. And
because this road isn't easy, the one you have always traveled. It's
and so
very difficult. It's very painful. This one could have some challenges, but it's not like that one is all wonderful and roses, balloons, and.
there's a saying, and I always mess it up. And I'm going to do it right here. Anais Nen Rose. Um, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And so that saying, it reminds people that you've thought your whole life that it's safer to remain tight and protected. But if you blossom and
Right,
love yourself, you're going to get hurt, but there's purpose to it. You're just not opening
right.
up to be vulnerable.
Well, and I offer them, your life's not great now, and you have
Hmm.
struggles. I offer you some struggles that might get you someplace away from the struggles
Right,
if you stay with it. And
right.
just like that quote that you just
If
mentioned.
we ask, and one thing, and I'm just thinking about this now, um, I'll probably use it for a session later on, but is to do imagery. So
Oh,
if we ask someone,
yes, yes.
is okay, what's at the end of your path? well, how does it end? My mom died a broken codependent with regrets, and my
Hmm.
dad was a florid narcissist all the way up to the end. What and I often tell them my story
Right.
that
What's the end?
the end, or what's the end of this side? The side that's risky, that has all that's fraught with potential dangers and potential harm. It has a happy ending. The other one, safe. How does it end? And if we can get them to visualize that, and it's really hard to do because
And it
some
can be
people,
hard, right? But you're right. That visualization changes emotional location in a system
oh, I like that. No, I'm gonna have to remember that.
because
Visualization
it
change emotional
because
location
you're
of the
not
system.
in the same emotional state or spot that you were
Right.
in when you do the visualization. And that's a powerful thing in a system.
Right,
Uh,
and I part of my therapy technique, I will use self-disclosure, limited, and I'll
sure.
tell the story, and it's a really sad story of my mom looking at carpet samples, making sure, and she's terminally ill, probably has a month to live, and she's picking out carpet for the house for my dad, and asking people not to bring her flowers, but a fruit basket, so she can give the fruit to the nurses, so the nurses are nicer to her. And I went, that's the visual I have.
That's the
And
visual.
I can't be that. And I hope people find
I
that
don't
same
want to be that.
visualization. Yeah,
Right. And I have many people who comment on my YouTube channel say, "Oh, well, I'm 65 years old now, and so it's too late for me, or I can't do anything." I'm going, "No, no, no, it's never too late."
exactly.
Then you don't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
If you're making that comment, then you don't understand what I'm saying because it's never too late. Now, did I say you could get 50 years of recovery in at this point?
well,
Probably not. I
no,
agree with you about that, but a
yeah,
70-year-old can make progress.
yeah. And you reminded me of the saying by George Eliot. It's not, and I always screw up saying, it's never too late to be the person you should have been. But I explain to people, what if you have 5 years?
Right,
5 years
five,
and you are happy, not scared, living by yourself, 5 beautiful years.
5 years.
And I help reframe it because you can't win when you got to be a good salesman when we do what we do.
We do.
Yeah.
And that's for their benefit. It's not to
Yes.
con them
Oh,
into something.
oh no,
It's
no.
that
Yes, of course, of
no,
course.
no, I know what you mean. But I'm saying
We got to talk.
I suppose in a way maybe I do want to con you. I don't care as
Yeah,
long as
whatever
the
it
end
takes.
result is you being happy.
Right.
That how can you focus on you, and that's what I want to persuade you
Absolutely.
of.
Yeah. And it's a really tough sales job because everything in their system needs them to not change.
Needs them to not change. Well, we've come to the end of our time.
Oh,
Is there
wow, that was
anything
quick.
else? I've loved it. Is there
Yeah, I did too.
anything that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you about, or I?
Oh no, no, I didn't expect this was filled with information and it was fascinating. So enjoy conversations like this. But if people want more of what I'm talking about, go to my website at
Tell them
selfloverecovery.com.
how can they find you? Yes,
Selfloverecovery.com. That website
that
will
will.
introduce you to most of everything that I do. And of course, they got you and your great stuff. But if they want something a little bit
Oh, absolutely.
extra, check it out. A lot of educational resources, and it's about self-love recovery. That's why I called my company the Self-Love Recovery Institute.
And we will put links to
Well,
those things
thank you.
down in the description so people can get to you. I want to tell you how much I enjoy spending time with you.
Hmm.
Probably we could spend another couple of hours
Oh, easily.
talking. And I don't know if the audience would like to watch all that, but I'd sure enjoy it. The
Yeah, me too.
and I think people will enjoy what we've shared today and how we've shared with each other.
Yeah,
And
and
Ross,
I'm gonna.
it has Ross Rosenberg, and I appreciate you being on with me today.
Well, thank you. I really enjoy this. We're kindred spirits, and it's so nice to know that you are as motivated and as as motivated to figure all this stuff out. And I'm glad to to have this connection.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a great day and be wise.